Okay, so first, of course, before we will really have to do our measurement, or we will have to do, or we will measure a certain object, of course, we will have to know the history of measurement first. So, one of the earliest inventions of human beings was the unit of measurement. So, usa ni siya sa pinaka-una nga na-invent ng mga tao. So, in ancient times, people needed measurement to determine kung unsa ka taas or unsa ka dako ang mga butang, no? And they really need to measure these things para makahimo tag mga bayay and even our clothes, right? So, kini siyang mga sinina nato, gina-measure sa na siya, no? May mga sinina na maibo nimo, may mga sinina na maibo ni Dija, dili tas dili maibo nimo. So, that is actually one of the purpose of measurement, no? Na dapat naanggid ta or kabalo ta mo measure ng usa ka butang. No, dili lang kung ang ato ra i-measure per me is ang gugma ni Diyos sa ato, no? Dili lang ta mag-focus sa ingana ng mga butang. Also, we have to focus on how we will measure a certain objects. And of course, that will be our application for this discussion. So, after our discussion about these things, we will do some mag-measure ta ng mga butang. And dapat kabaluta mo measure, no? So, later, units of measurement were used in trade and commerce. So, in the 3rd century before Christ in Egypt, people used their body parts to determine the measurement of things. They are using their body parts. So, one of the examples of the body parts is what we actually have with our activities, like the palms, like the forearm, those things. So, the same body parts that you use to measure the assigned things to you in our activity. No? Sa activity na gihatag nako earlier. So, the forearm length was called a cubit. So, ang tawag ba dyan nila sa forearm length is cubit. So, the hand span was considered a half cubit. And while the palm was considered 1/6 of a cubit. So, the Egyptians came up with these units to be more accurate in measuring different lengths. So, however, using these units of measurements had a disadvantage kay dili man tanan na ay pariha og length sa ila forearm. Unsaon na lang tong mga bugbo as what I have said earlier. So tong mga tag-as, no? Di ba kung taas, mas taasan ang mga forearm like that. So, nagi mga mahitabo na error or some discrepancies na mahitabo when the people started comparing their measurements to one another because measurements of the same thing differ depending on who was measuring it. No, so depende siya sa tao nga nag-measure ana ng mga butang. Because of this, these units of measurement are called non-standard units of measurement. So again, kini siya na mga measurement sa una. Gitawag ni nato og non-standard measurement. So which later on evolved into what is now the inch, foot, and yard. So the basic units of length in the English system of measurement. So the result of measuring are merely approximations rather siya. Since measurements are not always exact. So, kumita ng mga approximation almost, no, or padulong sa exact na measure pero dili jud sadya mo equal sa measurement nga naata. So that is why we can say that kato na pagka-measure kay more on like or merely an approximation. No, so oftentimes there is a relative error involved. So, accuracy of measurements actually depends on two factors. Sa maning nga mga factors. The first one is the skill of the person doing the measurement. No? So, this can be developed through constant practice. So, dapat na tayo skill on how we measure a certain things. Ikaduha, the precision of the instrument used in measuring. Kung unsa kasakto ang pagka-measure sa tao. So, this is totally dependent to the measuring device. You have here, no, the English system of measurement was widely used until the 1800s and 1900, when the metric system of measurement started to gain ground and became the most used system of measurement worldwide. So first, gidescribe by Belgian mathematician Simon Steven sa ija booklet, no, The Art of Tenths, and proposed by English philosopher si John Wilkins, and the metric system of measurement was first adopted dito sa France in 1799. And in 1875, the General Conference on Weights and Measures was tasked to define the different measurements. So by 1960, no, na-release na dajon, or CGPM released the International System of Units, or we call this SI. So kung may SI, this is the International System of Units, which is now being used by majority of the countries, with the biggest exception being the United States of America. So, since Philippines used to be a colony of the United States, no, sa una na mga panahon, ang earlier Filipinos kay gitudloan ta unsaon paggamit sa English instead sa metric system of measurement. So thus, they preferred English system rather than the metric system. Although the Philippines have already adopted the metric system as its official system of measurement. So, ang metric system of measurement kay mas sadyon siya gamiton compared sa English system of measurement. Since ang ija pag-convert or ang conversion factors would consistently be in the decimal system, unlike sa English system of measurement where units of length have different conversion factors. So, the base unit for length is the meter, and units longer or shorter than the meter would be achieved by adding prefixes to the base units. So, kini siya ng mga prefixes may also be used for the base units, like for the mass, volume, time, and other nga mga measurements. So, we have here are the common prefixes used in metric system. So, if you have the prefix yuta, ang symbol lang gigamit is y. And we also have here the factor. Hindi siya. So, napato yung mga nano, milli, micro, pico. Okay. The 7 SI base units are comprised of kini ra jud siya, no? When we talk about the SI, sa tong SI, sa tong SI, that is the to, International System of Units. So, sa quantity, natay gitawag na length. So, ang unit na gamito nato or base unit na gamito nato for length is meter. Dili pwede na may kag, huy, kuhaon na ho ang sukod sa length. Sa may imo gamito, kilogram. Hala, ang katason. Unsa may katason ni kuan? Unsay katason sa kuan? Building. No, ang ato gitubag kay 500 meters. No, dili to may 500 kilogram. No, so again, mao na ang sa length, ang ato gamiton is meter. Ang sa time kay second. Ang sa amount of substance, that is mole. And sa electric current, that is ampere. Sa temperature, we use Kelvin. Sa luminous intensity, we use candela. And sa mass kay kilogram. No? Pila na itimbang ni kuan, ni daog-daog. 40 kilogram, ma'am. Dili kong maingon nga 40 meter, ma'am. Hala. So, dili siya pwede. So, dapat kabalota kung unsa ang mga base unit sa quantity nga ato igamit. So, nagets ra? Wala, way nanubag, way nakagets. Ora kan, kay para mahuman. Sige. Tama na ta 850. So, in both English and metric system, there is a basic unit for length. Mas, ato mga sa activity kagaina, no, nagipa, guess mo na ako unsa ning word. So, nagit tay mga, sa both sa English at sa metric system, natay mga basic units. Sa length, sa mass, volume, sa time, temperature, o sa angles. So though these basic units are still widely used, the adoption of the international system of units will serve its purpose, which is to provide the same values of measurements wherever it is performed. So maro gid na ang purpose na dapat pareha jud ang value na ma-measure nato. No. Sige. We have here questions to ponder. So when a Filipina is described as 1.7 meters tall, would she be considered tall or short? So how about if she is described as 5 feet and 7 in tall? So would she be considered tall or short? So the answer for that is that chances are you will find it difficult to answer the first question. No kung kaning 1.7 meters tall kay makonsidered ba nato siya na tall or short? So for the second question naman, kay a Filipino with a height 5 feet and 7 in would be considered tall by Filipino standards. No, makonsider jud na tall by Filipino standards siya. Number 2, which particular unit of height were you more familiar with and why? So possibly in measuring height, the use of feet and inches is more familiar to you than that of meters because the English system is still being widely used in the Philippines for this quantity. So if you can still remember, no, pilay imo height. So we usually use 5 feet or inches ang ginagamit because we were being used to um, using the English system compared to the metric system. So we are actually not using meters when it comes to the height. But karon nagkaanan na dapat namin sa ingana. So diha na lang sa